In this Cambridge Marketing College webinar, we're going to talk about data, AI, and marketing decision making. These three things are now going very, very much hand in hand. You won't probably be making many marketing decisions without data, and you probably won't be doing much data without AI. So these three things are almost this kind of triple benefit of blending data quality, marketing decision making, prioritization, and the use of artificial intelligence. So, in this session, we're going to explore how data informs AI driven marketing decisions, why data quality and governance matter, and how marketers can critically interpret AI generated insight rather than just relying on it blindly. And I'm sure if you're super busy like me, you'll find there's a temptation to do that. So, we're going to avoid those things now. We're going to get best value from these three elements of our role. Data matters more than ever right now. AI tools depend entirely on the quality of the data that they receive. You know, when you put a good prompt in, you're going to get a good output from your AI. Well, the same thing happens to data. Poor data will lead to misleading insights, flawed predictions, and also critically poor marketing decisions. You know, there is this principle, garbage in, garbage out. It's a data science principle. So we all know that this is true. So data is super, super important. Having the right quality of data, using that within our AI tools, and then having reliable confidence in our decision making as a result of those outputs is going to be key. So, where in your current marketing processes do you think, just as a reflection, poor data quality might already be affecting decisions? Do you have gaps? Do you have stuff where the data is maybe not that reliable or where you're not quite sure what the sources are for it? Areas of improvement that we're going to be focusing on in this talk. So what do we mean then by data in marketing? Let's get a few kind of little observations of some of the examples here. Well, marketing data typically will include things like customer behavior data, transaction data, engagement metrics, survey and sentiment feedback, and external market information. So there's a lot of different types of data or information, if you want to call it that. And data becomes valuable, really valuable, when you can turn it into intelligence. So if we're thinking here, information into intelligence, it's when we interpret it. So when it supports decision making, because it's been interpreted, not just the raw data, but what that raw data means, then it's going to support some confident decision making. So that's what we want to try and get to. So currently, little question for you, what data sources do you rely on most frequently when making your marketing decisions? So if you're a content creator and you're thinking about this from the perspective of, okay, I need to kind of understand, how to write this next piece of content, this next social post or this next article or blog, what data sources are you using? If you're a more strategic marketer, maybe a strategist, what kind of data sources are you using to start making those planning decisions that obviously are going to be critical in your role too? So thinking what data sources you rely on most frequently is a key thing here, because if we can make these more effective and start to blend in the capability of AI with those data sources, then maybe we're going to supercharge the stuff that we already do. And of course, there is this relationship between data and AI already. I mean, AI systems, though, when you think about it, they don't understand data in the human sense that we do. But what they can do, way better than us, is they can identify patterns and probabilities within that data. So they can see trends, they can see interactions or correlations between certain pieces of data that we could never see because it just isn't that obvious. But the AI can do it in the blink of an eye. So data selection, data structure, and data completeness will all influence the output if we're thinking of using AI here. So currently then, how confident are you that the data you're feeding into your analytics or your AI tools is reliable? How confident do you feel that that is? And if the question is, well, I don't really know, then there's the answer. We need to get to the heart of this and actually understand what is going on under the hood. So let's think of a little bit of a kind of a hierarchy here. We've got this thing called the marketing analytics hierarchy. It's a real thing. And it's really important to kind of understand where we kind of sit in this hierarchy. This is not about kind of judging. This is not about saying, oh, no, we're right at the kind of, the starting line on this thing. If you are, you are. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm hugely deep into the journey of this one either, but we're all kind of somewhere on this journey. I mean, analytics maturity progresses through different stages. When we're thinking about data, analytics, and then using AI to support decision making, what we're looking at here are different levels, if you like, of the organization's current marketing analytics capability. It could be descriptive. Most people are at the descriptive level, and that's what happened. It could be diagnostic, which is, well, why did what happened happen? That's an interesting. Why did it happen? Could also be predictive, further into maturity here. It's like, well, okay, we know what happened, we know why it happened, so what might happen next? That's predictive analytics. And then we could move to the highest level, which is prescriptive. In other words, what should we do about it? So think about this kind of which level best describes you, your team, or your organization's current level. Is it you just focus on what happened, you report that, and you make decisions from that? Or do you understand why it happened and then you make decisions from that? Do you do predictive, what might happen next? Because, of course, AI can help us with that one. Or do we do prescriptive, which is what we should do about the current situation? So there we go. There's four kind of levels there. There's four opportunities, but there's definitely, even if you're at the prescriptive level, using AI in collaboration with the data holdings that you have, which you're going to understand more as we go deeper into this, then you get a chance, you get an opportunity here to start to really use it strategically, not just report what happened, but actually start to use it to make solid decisions. So let's just take a little bit of a step backward here and just kind of focus in to start with then on this data quality question, because I've mentioned this a number of times already. So when we say quality data, what do we mean? Well, we mean that it's accurate, complete, consistent, timely, and relevant. Okay, so those are things that are really important. If you have any weaknesses in your organization's data, understand where those are. Are they because well, it's not actually that accurate, it's maybe incomplete, maybe it's inconsistent, maybe it doesn't arrive at the time I need it, maybe it's not that relevant to what I need to make decisions from. So high quality data is all five of those things: accurate, complete, consistent, timely, and relevant. Once you've got that, you can then start to uncover some data quality problems with the data that comes through there. Because typical issues will be that you'll see in the data maybe duplicate records, almost certainly missing information or inconsistent formats. A lot of the time as well, it can be quite outdated. You might have up-to-date data for a particular thing, but then elsewhere you don't. So it might be that you've got great information on your website analytics, for example, but you don't really have great stuff coming through in your social media insights. So poor quality can distort predictions maybe that AI is going to be able to help with as a result of what you're collecting. So common data quality problems can have this ripple effect through the outputs and then the decisions that you're taking. So when you think about the data that you've got and that you're working with, have you ever discovered incorrect or duplicated data in any of the stuff that you look into? I'm sure you have. I know I have. Often there's a missing kind of cell in the spreadsheet and you think, oh no, I've got to go backwards now and try and find that. Why did that get missed? Or, it's often it crops up on a day-to-day, very practical level. That's really what we're talking about here. We also need to think when we're looking at data quality about cleaning and preparation, because if we just throw a really messy spreadsheet or report or piece of analysis into an AI, that is what it's got to work with. So what we want to try and do before analyzing or putting it into an AI model, remove the duplicates, standardize formats, validate any fields and identify any missing values. It's really important to be doing that. And really understanding that that's a thing that we should be doing regularly, just checking and making sure we're being a kind of collaborator with our AI. You can't expect AI to solve problems that it can't see. So you need to be very clear that the information you're putting in, remember, garbage in, garbage out, is actually able to be used because it's reliable for the AI. The AI can do some level of sorting of the information, but it's much better if you give it quality information from the outset. Then what we're looking at probably here, and I've said this thing about the website data and then the social media insights as a simple example, is what we're trying to do probably is see if there's any interactivity amongst those pots of data. Because, one thing, it could be that, social media posts then drives traffic to the website. So we need to see that interrelationship between those two pieces of data. If we increase the number of engagements on that social post, will that increase the traffic to the website page? Will that traffic then correlate with the number of inquiries and then sales? So we're looking for these kind of interconnected or integration challenges that we all have. I mean, marketing data often will sit across like multiple systems. I mean, I'm just keeping that very simple example, but you will see data coming through that you'll probably want to work with from your CRM, analytics tools, social media dashboards, the two I've mentioned there, but also maybe ad platforms, email platforms, etc., etc. So integrating these sources is going to be critical to get the right kind of insight. I mean, just reflect for a moment. How many different separate systems do you think currently hold customer data in your organization? I've just given a few little examples there. I'll bet it's a lot. Data doesn't necessarily mean the name of the person or, their email address or things like that. It can be records of their behavior. It can be interactions or engagements where their account sits outside of your control in, say, a social media channel, but that's still some data that's relevant to you. So having this big picture of kind of what's going on and where this data sits will be the starting point to help you to start integrating it. And of course, AI can help you to identify that if you work with it. And then when we start to think about how broad this kind of data holding is, we then need to start considering data governance. Now, data governance ensures accuracy, accountability, legal compliance, and also really vitally, the ethical use of data. Because without governance, your AI insights can't be trusted. You need to have somebody, if it's not you, somebody else in the organization, maybe go talk to them, who's responsible for overseeing data quality and compliance. Every organization should have a data governance specialist or officer or somebody who is the go-to, accountable and responsible for these things, because every organization is responsible for holding customer and other sensitive data. So therefore, it needs to be governed. It's absolutely critical. And of course, the AI needs to understand that as well. If there are any parameters that the AI needs to work with, so it's not allowed to, if it was, for example, ChatGPT, it's not allowed to do its calculations in public. You would have to be locking it down to a corporate account or maybe using an internal AI like Copilot, for example, to keep that data safe. It's those kinds of things that we need to start thinking about. You can't just throw any data into any AI and expect to get, top quality answers in a safe, well-governed way. You have to think about this before. And there are regulations to think about as well that ensure that we are doing this properly. I mean, marketing data must comply with things like GDPR, Data Protection Act, privacy regulations, certain things within your industry, if you're translating this into your own examples there, and also consent. Customer consent. Have you collected that in a carefully regulated and governed way? Are you holding the right kind of data? And do you have consent to hold that data? And are you making that data available to the customer if they ask for it? All of these things are considerations, and these things go way beyond just the manipulation of the data. This is about ethical and responsible handling of that data so that the data that you collect and hold does comply with current regulations even before you start to use it to inform your decision making. This thing really is ethics. I mean, I use the phrase there, responsibility. I mean, responsible marketing requires being transparent, fair, you're having customer consent and responsible targeting as well. I mean, the CIM have got a responsible marketing framework that is really key here. And this is the way that we should be governing our data. So no matter how you want to use the data, making sure that both you and your customers understand how the data is going to be used for marketing activities is key. You need to have some policies, you need to have some statements, which are, they don't need to be technically complex, but just plain English. This is our intention. Here's our vision. This is how we're going to hold the data. This is why we're holding the data, and also the reasons for using it. And then once you've got those things in place, and so you've got this kind of responsible holding of data, you know which channels it's coming from, you hopefully have started to think about integrating it and seeing these patterns of where the data is coming from, you can then start to use AI responsibly. So AI in marketing decision making is going to support you by analyzing these, what are now sounding like very large data sets. You're going to identify patterns and trends with ease. You're going to be able to forecast customer behavior, stakeholder engagement, etc. And you're going to be able to automate with the optimization targets that you have. So these are the things that are going to be possible here. But AI still requires human interpretation. You are going to still be in charge of this analysis, in charge of this decision making. Yes, it's fueled by and empowered with AI, but you are still in charge here. So, what marketing decisions currently, little reflection point here, in your organizations currently rely on AI insights? Is the AI kind of interpreting certain things, certain scenarios, campaigns, or projects? And are you then making judgments on those things already? Is this stuff kind of already happening? If it is, then are you doing it in this new responsible, well-governed way? There may well be room for improvement if you want to tighten things up here. But if you're brand new to this, I think what you're seeing here is that it's kind of simple but complex in equal measure. It's simple conceptually, but then once you start to put data in to make this thing actually begin to work, then it starts to get ever more complex because data can be complex. And so what we're looking for here is the assistance of AI to commonly sort of predict things where things might actually go wrong, or things are currently a bottleneck, or there might be gaps and there might be a level of understanding. Look, we've got all this data, we've got all this information, all this analysis, and all this insight coming through, but we don't even know what we should be looking for within it. So AI commonly will predict things like, this is definitely not a definitive list, but it would be things like the purchase likelihood for a particular customer or group of customers on a particular product, the likelihood of customer churn or the average customer churn, and then what you can do about it if you go deep into conversation with AI, if it identifies that. Campaign performance, obviously, it's going to be able to predict because it knows every single campaign on the planet that has ever existed. So it can use that knowledge as a large language model to then predict what is actually likely to happen in advance if you're using data that is relatively up to date. And also things like product recommendations. It can help you to prioritize and predict from the data which products are most likely to be attractive to which particular customers. So which of these kind of prediction models or approaches would most improve your marketing outcomes right here today? Purchase likelihood, customer churn, campaign performance, or product recommendations? These tend to be the big four. There, as I say, there are many, many others where AI is being used to predict possibilities going forward in marketing, but these tend to be the big four. So if you had to choose one of these big four, which one would improve your marketing outcomes the most? Because that's going to be one that we can focus on. Using AI responsibly also looks at personalization and customer data because, of course, we know that AI will enable personalized experiences. It'll enable us through the data to be able to segment more accurately. We can then define those segments, and AI can help us to really sort of, allocate people into these new segments that we're looking at. It can provide recommendations in terms of, the actual recommendation engines. In other words, Google, Gemini, Grok from X, Twitter, ChatGPT, etc. These kind of recommendation engines, they're not search engines really anymore. They're recommendation engines because what they're doing is they're gathering information from a website or a digital presence like yours, and then they're deciding whether or not to present you as a recommendation to back to their human. That is what's happening here. Search has fundamentally changed. It's going through this transition, and you want to be part of this. So talk to your AI, get into a deep debate about how can we use from the data that we've got, how can we use this insight now to actually become relevant to AI agents or these AI searches so that we can appear in these recommendations that the AIs are going to throw back to their humans. And also things like behavioral targeting can again be very much part of this personalized experience that comes out from talking to your AI with the data that you've got. But excessive personalization, there is a little caveat here. It may reduce trust. What we do want to see here is a nice balance. I've used this word balance a number of times, and it's so, so important. Personalization is one of the big things. If you look at the current kind of state of AI and you listen to a lot of the AI media, it will be saying about hyper personalization, getting really up close and intimate with your customer. And AI will enable you to do that. But there is this challenge now that says excessive personalization, where it looks a little bit almost intrusive. That may in itself reduce trust, and people may then start to switch off or say, well, actually, you've gone a little bit beyond the level of relationship I want with you as a brand. So therefore, whoa, pull back, or oh, I'm going to now unsubscribe. So you've got to be careful here. This is all definitely about balance. And then we can start to think about interpreting the data and the AI outputs. So we've basically got I'll just use the simple example of the website analytics and the social media insights. So let's just say that we've now input that into our chosen AI, and it's starting now to sort of do the number crunching, and it's coming out with some really interesting outputs based on, because it knows, obviously, because we've briefed it and prompted it, it knows our strategy, knows our goals, what we're looking to do. But basically, the data itself needs to kind of speak more than just being data, because data requires interpretation. I mean, without the context, numbers may mislead. So what you need to be thinking about here is, what does my AI need to know about our plans, about our last sort of recent team meetings where we've discussed this or this or this, so that it can actually know the context in which to interpret the data, because you would know it if you were given a bunch of data and some spreadsheets and some reports and you had to do it manually. You'd have that context in your head, so you would know what you're looking for. Don't expect your AI to know what it's looking for. You've got to brief it. That's going to be really key here to get the right kind of interpretation and then the right kind of output. Because what it's looking for is it's starting then to help you do that correlation between the website analytics and the social media. What it's doing is this kind of thing about correlation and causation. It's looking to look at, say, these two variables moving together and really trying to understand, well, okay, so which one is the one that's kind of leading here? I mean, higher engagement may coincide with campaigns, but might not be caused by them. So we make a lot of assumptions that humans is that, if I get more engagement there in this social post, and that leads to more click-throughs to the website, well, it was those social posts that caused those click-throughs that caused that product to sell more. It might be, but it also might not be. So this is where we have to be super careful in our interpretation. And again, playing back and pushing back to our AI. Are you sure? Is there another alternative? Can we actually prove that that was the case? What is the flip side of this? And ask it to kind of argue against itself. Ask it to critique what it gives as an output and say, are you 100% certain that is the reason here? Because certain things don't necessarily lead to certain other things. So you're going to give it this kind of human intuitive spin, if you like, when it gives you an output. So don't just accept that the first version of an AI output in data analysis is correct. And also, we're going to see bias. We will. I mean, everything is biased. Everything is skewed in a particular direction. You're human. Your AI is in the way that it's been built and the way that you've prompted it. Biases may occur when data sets are incomplete, when samples are unrepresentative, and when algorithms amplify patterns. That last one is key. If you're working with social media, for example, it isn't just pure raw data. The algorithms have amplified what has happened there, which may or may not be related to the quality of your creative or your post. It might just be the algorithm skewed it. So we will always see bias in our data. And so that's something to know. It is always there. You cannot, I've never in my life seen a piece of data or an interpretation or a piece of analysis that was not in some way biased, even if really subtly, even if 0.1%. It's still biased. It is an inherent part of this. And so we need to just be honest with ourselves and we need to kind of have the right level of expectation from our AI support that there is going to be inherent bias in everything. And once we kind of accept that, then it is not kind of condoning it and saying it's right, but it is just a natural consequence of what we are doing. And so then it kind of says, okay, if we're making good decisions from the data and from the AI analysis and interpretation, we can only take those decisions at a certain level of confidence. There's always going to be some level of inherent risk. It might be that this data was biased a lot, and so actually it's quite high risk, and we might need a plan B. If it doesn't work, the next thing we're going to do. But it might be that it's so subtle you don't even see it. But just knowing it's there is a nice little safe check. Not that you're going to work then forwards from here with fear, but you're just conscious and aware that that is happening. Then we need to sort of be thinking about other things that go alongside that kind of bias or that risk, if you like, that things are being skewed by algorithms or just by human nature. And think about the importance of context because a lot of marketing stuff, a lot of marketing data, when you look at it and you see the trends and AI works with it, you'll see the context is moving. Seasonality, economic conditions, competitor behavior. Again, these algorithm changes. All of this stuff will change how things move on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. And so the context ensures that any interpretation you make from the data, from the AI's interpretations too, is actually being done in a realistic way. You're not just saying, okay, this data is perfect. I've made it absolutely squeaky clean. It's absolutely perfect. The AI is not biased in any way, shape, or form. So this is 100% accurate. Those are things you can never say. It is just not like that. But if you bring in some of these context angles, seasonality, economics, competitor behavior, etc., then you can at least view it with a lens that says, okay, here's the realism. This is the likelihood of what might happen or what might have happened in the past. And so you kind of get this realistic view, which I think is a really healthy thing, because then it accepts that no marketing decision is going to be perfect. It accepts no data or AI is perfect, but it balances and it reduces the risk of over reliance on these things. And so you just set the right level of expectation and appropriately. And so, from all of that, what we're looking to do, as I've said, it's turning data into insight, it's information into intelligence. We want to now start to make some decisions. This is our kind of, almost like the pointy bit of the arrow that we've been aiming towards here. So, insight occurs when data answers what happened, why it happened, and what we should do next. Just coming back to that kind of step-by-step framework that we were talking about before. So, what's the most useful insight your data currently provides to you? Just think about it at the moment. There must be something that you always rely on. It's always your go-to. And I would suggest possibly it's one or two things that help you to understand your KPIs, your key performance indicators, the way that you're kind of measuring and monitoring, just with a little bit of a traffic light warning system, how you're progressing in your marketing. That would likely be the thing that data is helping to support for you. So you understand what is going well, what can be improved, what is absolutely not working, and what you need to really attend to. That's where data is moving into a decision-making process that really helps you on a day-to-day basis. And of course, AI can inform that too. So really what we're looking at here is building or habit stacking a data-driven decision framework. This is really going to reduce any guesswork that you might have when you're kind of using data to inform your decisions with or without AI. It doesn't have to be with AI, but a lot of the time we will be using AI because of the scalability, because of the depth and the speed that it can do this work for us or with us. So there's a practical decision model here that you can start to bring in. So you're moving your data into a decision here. So it's define the decision you want, gather the relevant data, evaluate the reliability, the bias, etc., the thing I just talked about, interpret patterns or trends, decide on your decision, and then test it. That last bit is really key because a lot of the time people think that data, AI, and marketing decision making kind of ends at the decision. No, it doesn't. This is a continuous loop. So when you've made a decision, it doesn't mean that that is it, you're done. It means that you've made a decision to then test that decision. So you go back through the loop. You kind of you see then what happens and you then rework it and you get better and better and better. I think any marketer who thinks they can get it right first time, they probably don't understand the complexity of this and they don't understand actually how difficult this is. But it gets easier. It gets easier and easier and easier the more you do it. So that decide and test at the end of each of this decision framework is really, really key. And combining this human judgment, because I'm saying you now, sort of you as the leader of all of this decision making, be it at a strategic or a tactical or a day-to-day level, doesn't matter. It applies to all different levels. We're all doing decision making every single day and multiple times. But what we're looking to do here with the help of AI is in this kind of hybrid sense, is that we're combining AI with human judgment. Because AI excels at pattern recognition. It can see the things that we cannot see. Number blindness, it's often called. But humans over AI can provide strategic context. They can provide ethical oversight. They can provide creative interpretation. And so really what we're doing here is we're saying this is hybrid. This is a blended, co-created, cooperative way of using data to make decisions. So AI and us is really where we're going here. And so what I'm encouraging you to do as you go through this and start thinking and building this is to kind of really understand where AI can serve you best. Strong marketers really themselves should understand basic analytics concepts. They should understand data limitations. They should understand statistical reasoning to a certain level. But of course, AI can help you with that bit, and also ethical implications. If you have any gaps at all, be it significant gaps or just little things where you think, oh, might need to just top up my kind of knowledge on that, then use AI to enable you to do that. Remember, now we're talking about a collaborative approach. If you see those phrases and you think, Neil, I have no idea what you're talking about here, this is just going straight over the top of my head. Put those phrases into AI and say, look, I want to develop a relationship with you around these areas because I want to be making better decisions with my data for my marketing. Can we work together? Explain to me, guide me on what these things are, and your AI will come back and it will thank you for being part of a relationship and a conversation. You don't have to know everything, but you will know everything in combination with your AI. That's the way to approach this. Some of this stuff is very, very complicated and deep, and I keep seeing this word statistical in terms of the reasoning in there. That's hard. If you're not a mathematician, that is hard stuff, but not to AI. Just give the AI to do that bit. So you can then focus on the human bits, let the AI do the other bits. Because data literacy, this analytical ability in combination with AI is going to strengthen the decision confidence that you have. And also, really importantly, the confidence of those around you. Because if they can see that you're building this confidence, data and evidence driven, because you're making decisions around that data and evidence, you're turning this information that you've been collecting, the numbers, the data, the trends, but you're turning it into intelligence. You're turning it into stuff that's like gold dust for informing your decisions. Then everybody else is going to want a piece of this action too. So here's a practical data checklist for you. And again, do this in association with your chosen AI, Copilot, GPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever you decide you want some help with here. Before acting on data, question, is the data reliable? Is it representative? Is the time frame relevant? Is the context considered? And have you discussed it with your AI? And is the supporting or is it rather supporting the decision required? I mean, this checklist is going to reduce analytical mistakes, it's going to save time, and it's going to really importantly enable your AI to understand where you're going with this. Because if you are slightly confused about some of the things we've talked about, if not most of what we've talked about here in this talk, your AI can work alongside you and you two can figure it out together. This is a change of mindset. We're not thinking here when we're looking at data analytics and analysis. We're not looking at this and just kind of putting something to AI, seeing the output, and then carrying on. This is a combination. So I've used this word hybrid really carefully for you. This is a hybrid approach. The biggest value comes from human and AI working in collaboration. So my final thoughts, final reflection for you here. AI does not replace your critical thinking, but it will amplify its importance. Okay, data's powerful only when people know how to use it. That was Harvard Business Review. So I would suggest that you will know how to use it if you use it with AI. So go on a journey with your AI together, understand a lot of this terminology, check out some of these checklists, get AI to explain the stuff that you don't understand, because it will. And once it knows that you then know it and understand it, you can then work together to uncover some of those little opportunities that are hidden away in the data that you have. And it will really, really change the game if you take this approach. So this has been Data, AI, and Marketing Decision Making. I'm Neil Wilkins, and this is Cambridge Marketing College, hopefully helping you on your journey to understanding how AI can empower your role in marketing.